Good morning. Welcome to the Long Live Alternative Parties podcast. Free Press Media Press Inc., an alternative parties books publisher, sponsors this podcast. I'm Andrew Bouchard. Welcome to the Long Live Alternative Parties podcast. Today, Alternative Parties friends, we have another exciting guest on our podcast like we always have. His name is Tim Dunn with the Unite Party, and he's going to talk to us about the exciting things his party is doing. So welcome to the podcast, Tim.
Absolutely. Thank you, Andrew. It's a pleasure to be here.
Tim, let us get started by you kindly giving us an introduction to yourself, a brief biographical sketch.
Sure. I'm Tim Dunn. I'm the executive director of Unite New York. I've spent most of my adult life working in politics in New York in the Republican Party. I worked in the administration of Governor George Pataki, the last Republican to be elected to statewide office here in New York. I've since then worked on local elections, county elections, congressional, state legislature, all throughout, even some presidential work. And I came to learn more about Unite New York just a few years ago and became the executive director just about 2 or 3 years ago. And I'm eager to be part of an organization that's really seeking fundamental change in New York State government.
Excellent. So kindly tell our audience what is the roles and responsibilities of an executive director position of your organization.
Sure. So, I'm the main staff person for the organization. I'm responsible for developing messaging, recruiting and identifying candidates, soliciting donors, building content and messaging, and helping guide the organization in its growth and development. So I do everything but clean the dishes around here.
Oh my, that's cool. Also tell our audience what your organization does, what's its objective, and what it's trying to change.
Sure. So Unite New York really, its origin story started with the Upstate Jobs Party. We had started working on trying to build a new third party in New York State. But really what happened was January 6, 2021, when we saw the upheaval and division that came on January 6th, we realized that, we needed to change our efforts and refocus our efforts, because if we're in a situation where Americans feel that strongly and that jaded and that divided, then we have real serious problems in this state, in this country, that need to be fixed. And that really gave birth to Unite New York, where we seek to be a home really for New Yorkers of all political stripes. Republican, Democrat, liberal, conservative. We want to really help people align together and come together around concepts that are focused on pro-democracy reform. So trying to make our government and our political system a little bit more fair, a little bit more accessible, and really deal with those issues, because we think that, if we can have our democracy work for everyone, we can be in a position where we can actually start getting into issues and fix the things that we all care about. We really view the broken political system as the disease, and a lot of the issues that we care about really be more of the symptoms.
Sure. So since I heard you say you want to make it more fair and more accessible, how would you recommend we go about changing the system to make it more fair and more accessible?
Well, we think that there are a couple big problems that can be addressed. First and foremost, getting onto the ballot in New York. For a candidate to even get on the ballot, they really have to kowtow to political leadership, to unelected party leaders that are really more focused on building themselves up than fixing any issues. So we want to see it be easier for candidates to get on the ballot in New York. Right now, for an independent candidate to get on the ballot for governor, it requires 45,000 signatures. 45,000 signatures on a petition to get on the ballot in New York, whereas a major party candidate only has to get 15,000 signatures. So the system is fundamentally rigged against, competition. And we know that competition, as we've seen in democracy, as we've seen in capitalism, competition yields a better result. We want to see good government reforms like putting in place initiative and referendum, recall provisions, and actually allowing democracy to work for the voters, not party bosses. Some of the really specific areas of reform that we want to see are term limits, vote at home, open primaries, ranked choice voting. We think all of those reforms could greatly improve the operation of our democracy and making it more democratic.
Sure. So I heard you talk about recall. Now, do you think the way other states have been doing recalls, like California, is a good way to do it, or do you have a better way to do it?
Well, recall has not really been our primary area of focus.
Okay.
I think that, California has shown itself on recall provisions to be a little bit more of the Wild West than other areas. I think there's a good reason to consider having recall, but I think we're more focused on trying to get the election right on the first try rather than how you remove people from office.
Okay, fair enough. So since you mentioned term limits, what arguments do you believe are for term limits that you support?
Well, I think when you look across New York State, you have legislative leadership and folks in the state legislature, the assembly, and the Senate who are in lifetime positions. The reelection rate is close to 90% in our state legislature. And, in no point was government service ever expected to be, in public service expected to be a career path. We had an individual just recently, a state senator, who's literally served in the state legislature for 40 years, who is now running a primary, who was put into the same district as another legislator and decided to run a primary against them to try to stay in office. And that sort of a desperate clinging to power clearly is not indicative of a system that works. Few people have any job for 40 years. To have an entire career as a politician is just wrong. It's not the way our system was designed.
Sure. So what activities has your organization done to advance these objectives?
Well, we worked this year very hard to try to secure a place on the ballot for a candidate that came out in favor of our reforms. And that candidate is Harry Wilson. We circulated petitions on his behalf to try to get him on the ballot here in New York State. And because one of the interesting things in New York is we have what's called fusion voting, where candidates can be listed on multiple lines and their vote totals on those lines are fused together for their total. So candidates can run on a major party line as well as minor party line. And there were 6 or 7 organizations that attempted to get a candidate on the ballot for governor. We were one of them. And as I mentioned earlier, to get a candidate on the ballot for governor requires 45,000 signatures. And that's over the course of only 42 days that you have to collect those signatures. It is a near impossible task. In fact, of the 6 organizations that circulated petitions this year for independent candidates for governor, none of them were able to get the 45,000 signatures. So it is unfairly an unfairly high threshold put in place by folks in power. But we this year did actually turn in more than double the number of signatures that would have been required for an established party for Harry Wilson. Unfortunately, we did come up short in the State Board of Elections invalidated our petitions just 2 weeks ago.
Oh no, I'm sorry about that.
It was not terribly unexpected. The system is set up to keep out competition. And so we're going to keep plugging away at that. We are challenging that decision in court, and we have a fantastic litigation team that is seeking to have our ballot status restored. There are many of the other independent organizations are also filing lawsuits against the state of New York for similar reasons. So it's a really unfair law that we think will get changed at some point. But right now we have to fight that effort through the court system.
Oh, good for you. Good, you're not lying down. You're going to fight it. That's awesome.
Certainly not. We've got, we've built a team of county leaders and state leaders. We've endorsed in the last several years more than 30 candidates for state and local office, and more than 2/3 of those candidates have been elected. So, and those are candidates that are Republicans, Democrats, and independents. So we feel like we're building the right momentum to really drive and effectuate change here in New York.
Sure. So you said you wanted to get Harry Wilson on the ballot. I've never heard of him before, pardon my ignorance. So can you explain to our audience a little bit about who Harry Wilson is?
So Harry Wilson ran in the Republican primary for governor this year.
Okay.
He he was unsuccessful in the Republican primary, but he had actually run for state comptroller 12 years ago. He's the last of Republican to come within 5 points of victory statewide. In that race, he lost by just under 3%. He is a upstate New York native who has gone on to really big things in business. He's been recognized as a corporate turnaround expert. He actually led the task force that was put together to restructure the automobile industry post the 2008 recession, and really helped save the automobile industry in the United States. And today, continues to work as a corporate turnaround specialist. Really had a great plan to come in and try to turn around New York State and fix some of the problems that we're facing. But unfortunately, like I said, he did not win the Republican primary.
Sure. Since you mentioned the requirements there, you're saying it's 45,000, 42 days, which would be over 1,000 signatures a day. What do you think it should be for ballot access for alternative parties? Do you think there should be nothing? Do you think there should be something? What do you think it should be?
Well, at a bare minimum, it ought to at least be returned to what it used to be. It used to be 15,000 signatures until about 2.5 years ago. And what happened was, not even 2.5 years ago, Governor Cuomo slipped this measure into a budget bill under the guise of COVID relief and tripled that threshold from 15,000 signatures to 45,000 signatures. In some states, you don't even have to gather signatures. In the state of Texas, you can just file and pay a filing fee, and you can be on the ballot for governor. But unfortunately, the goal here by the two major parties was to prevent new parties from being created and prevent competition. We think if you look at it, 15,000 would be a good start. Probably as low as 5,000 or 10,000 would be even better. Because in our opinion, the more candidates you can have on the ballot, the more parties that exist, the better ideas that we're going to have. You really have to fundamentally believe in democracy if you're folks like us, because folks that are trying to prevent more parties from being created or more people being on the ballot, that's a really undemocratic concept. The whole idea of democracy is you put as many ideas out there as possible, and then the voters decide which ideas, which concepts, which candidates they think are the best and select them. That's the fundamental premise of democracy, and I don't know about you, but I think democracy has proven itself to work pretty well.
So here's a question for you. How are you reaching the voters in the state? Since you weren't able to get on the ballot, at least temporarily, hopefully you will ultimately. How do you reach voters?
Well, I can talk about what we've done in the past, and then
okay.
I don't want to reveal any of our secrets for this year just yet. But in the past, we do have an independent expenditure committee that supports candidates, and what we do is when that independent expenditure committee endorses a candidate, we then will dedicate resources to that candidate's election. We don't give money to the candidate. What we do instead is we actually undertake some advertising in support of those candidates. So we talk about the virtues of the candidate and why they are someone that we think voters should believe in. And we do that through a series of digital advertising tools, mobile display ads, digital display ads. promoted social media content to get the story out about our candidates. Sometimes we even do direct mail pieces. And one of the things that we're really proud of is our digital advertising is some of the most effective in the political world. When you look at the click-through rate for political ads, the industry average click-through rate is about 0.08%, and that's the click-through rate is, when someone sees an ad and they click on it to actually say, they're interested and engaged enough in the ad that they click on it and say, yeah, I want to learn more. The industry average is about 0.08% click-through rate. Our ads have traditionally and historically performed at about 0.13%. So really, 50% higher than industry average. So we've proven ourselves to be really effective at telling the story and getting our candidates in front of the voters. And as a result, like I said, more than 2/3 of our candidates that we've supported have been elected.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
So do the candidates like fusion voting, or is that parties that like it more?
So, it's difficult to say. I mean, most candidates will say that they're happy to be on more than one line on the on the ballot, just because whether that tells the voters that candidate's stronger or just gives them feel like they have more of a choice. Candidates normally like that. Parties are not always as inclined. For example, we had some candidates this year that we were looking to support that were told by other parties that if they took our support, that they would lose their traditional party support, which is sort of mind-boggling to me. I always thought that it's good to have more, the support of more people than fewer, but
Sure.
I guess that's why I work for an independent organization and not an established party.
Sure. So it sounds like you have a big team or a team that you work with. How do you motivate your team to take action and to do your stuff? What are some leadership tips you would give our audience?
Well, I think the number one way to be a successful leader is make sure you pick a great team. If you can get a great team, they're really self-motivating, and that is a big part of success is having a self-motivated team. But one of the other things that we really focus upon is, even though folks are not necessarily in a party, it doesn't mean that they lack in motivation and excitement for political change. We found that the people that are most engaged and most excited about change oftentimes have not been politically active in the past. They're folks that they go out and vote, but they haven't necessarily worked on a campaign or volunteered for a campaign or run for office themselves. But rather they see, and we're seeing this more and more in New York State, people that are politically unaffiliated coming into the fold and saying, we want to get involved. We don't want to join either party, but we want to be part of change. And that's really appealing to a lot of folks. And in New York State, the second largest voting bloc in the state are unaffiliated voters. The Democratic Party has about 6 million members. There are 3.5 million unaffiliated voters, and then there are 2.9 million Republicans. So there are more unaffiliated or independent voters in the state of New York than there are Republican, conservative, and working families party members combined.
Oh my, that's a good position for you then.
Absolutely.
So since you've conducted other political campaigns, what tips would you give our audience who are conducting campaigns? A lot of people who are listening to our program are candidates or members of parties, leaders of parties. So kindly share any tips you have for campaigns.
Tips for campaigning. I guess, never miss an opportunity for personal contact, for one-on-one talking to the voter. It's far too often candidates and campaigns focus on the people inside campaign headquarters and I heard a great lesson from Rudy Giuliani once where he said, look around your campaign headquarters. Everyone in this room is already voting for you. Get out and talk to somebody who hasn't decided yet, which I think is really, really great advice. But beyond that, it's never ever get outworked. You can have the greatest name ID and greatest appeal as a candidate, but you cannot ever let someone outwork you. Working hard will always yield good things, regardless of whether that's in a political campaign or in life in general.
Sure. So, Tim, for our audience out there, how can they support and or join your organization?
Well, we would welcome anyone to check us out on the web at www.uniteny.org. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, or LinkedIn. Would love to have you come along, join our fight, learn a little bit more about what we're doing, donate or volunteer for our efforts. We've got a lot of hard work ahead of us, but as we say, New York is worth trying to save, and we're going to do our best to do it.
Excellent. We wish you all the best in that and all your party activities.
Thank you so much, Andrew. Appreciate it, and I appreciate your time today.
All right. Take care, and all the best to you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.